So I guess one of the hottest takes I can make into a YouTube video concerns the character of the Iron Giant, who is getting a not entirely pure-hearted resurgence in the past couple of years. The Iron Giant resurgence started when he replaced Ultraman as the large, beloved heavy fighter for the end climax of Ready Player One. And since that cameo, he's carried himself along into a few more cameos. He was in fucking Space Jam, the new one, doing absolutely nothing. And finally, in our present day, the Iron Giant has become the quote-unquote Zangief-style brawler for the hit free-to-play Smash Bros. Clone Multiverses. So the Iron Giant has come to represent a kind of non-ironic 1990s nostalgia figure for adults who were kids at the time, and in many ways, it's just kind of being manipulated in the same way that Space Jam itself was wrongly manipulated and then wrongly rebooted with LeBron James. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Hey everybody, I'm Buster Green. Please subscribe to this video. I worked really hard on this video for about 2 weeks. Anyway, so this is my deep dive video on the Iron Giant, and I guess I kind of have to start this video over because when I was doing my first draft of this, I ending up in a very, very dark place that I didn't expect myself to end up in and that I really wasn't ready for. And I guess now that I'm restarting, I'm still not sure if I'm ready for it now, but I have to completely change the tone of this video to take you guys along with me on this very dark journey that we're going to go on. And I'm going to warn you guys now, I'm going to get into some very gruesome stuff later, because somehow I managed to connect the dots between the Iron Giant and some pretty gruesome suicides. And now you're going to find out how this all relates together with this beloved children's character. So to start talking about the Iron Giant, you need to start with the beloved children's movie, the directorial debut of Brad Bird, the man who later would make 2 very good Incredible movies and also a movie with a talking cooking rat. Brad Bird is currently somehow the leader of Pixar Animation, and by all accounts he's earned it, he's a good guy. Everyone loves the Iron Giant. I love the Iron Giant, but I also hate the Iron Giant. Well, let me be more specific. If I'm being really real, I hate the movie The Iron Giant, which has become a pretty hard movie to hate, especially in the long run. See, I originally created this video to discuss the reasons I don't like the 1998 film The Iron Giant, while also backtreading over my personal history with the character. However, while doing this deep dive, I uncovered the deadly nightmare behind the Iron Giant, which is the real story. And finding out this real story just kind of made me appreciate him so much more, and at the same time chilled me to my core. So I guess the first thing I need to go over when I'm starting off this video is, one of the main reasons I started this video was to think about a question that's been haunting me, and that is, who is the Iron Giant's arch enemy? You know, Batman has the Joker, Superman has Lex Luthor. The Iron Giant is essentially kind of a Superman ripoff. So who's his arch enemy, you know? Alright, so let's say you love the Iron Giant. It was your favorite childhood movie. Then you can tell me who the Iron Giant's enemy is, right? Now, if your only exposure to the Iron Giant was the 1990s movie, you'd probably say it was this sleazy Republican ginger army man dude. He's essentially the villain of the movie, but he's actually not the Iron Giant's arch enemy. In fact, I'm not even sure if the Iron Giant even knew who he was or comprehended his existence. Ginger Army Man, his character name is Kent Mansley. He's just the main character, Hogarth Hughes' archenemy. Or maybe he's the archenemy of this rival, cool, super beatnik coffee guy who also kind of has a competing ship thing going on for Hogarth's mom. My point is that this dude, he's not the Iron Giant's archenemy. He doesn't even hold a candle to the Iron Giant in terms of size and power. This dude could never beat the Iron Giant in a straight fist fight. The Giant would just step on him and never even acknowledge that he was ever born. See, the first of the great enemies of the Iron Giant is King Ghidorah.
Nothing the screen has ever shown before can surpass the thrills of Ghidra, the three-headed monster.
Okay, I'm kidding. Not literally the giant Japanese Toho monster King Ghidorah, although that would be such an amazing fucking fight. And also, I have to point out that that fight is potentially in the cards of Multiverses, eventually planning to add Godzilla. And my point is, I guess you should campaign for King Ghidorah to be added to Multiverses. But see, the reason I hate the Iron Giant, the movie, is a quite common reason that a lot of people will give you when they tell you they don't like the movie. And that's that it's an adaptation from something they love, the book. What I'm getting at is the book was simply better. You see, I still remember the first time I read the original Iron Giant book. I was in 3rd grade and we had to do this like diorama project. And there was one reason I picked this book, that this book spoke to me and that I went out of my way to read it. And that is that the original Iron Giant book is a fucking kaiju battle. You read through the book. The book starts exactly like the movie. The Iron Giant descends from space like the movie. He befriends a boy named Hogarth like the movie. The book does take place in London, not like New England, but the point is the movie and the beginning of the book are basically the same story. However, they split at a certain point. The movie climaxes with the Iron Giant having to decide whether or not he's a weapon, and then he decides he's a hero and he sacrifices himself to stop a nuclear escalation of the Cold War. The book, however, does not do that. The book climaxes with a fucking space dragon, a cosmic celestial threat, a monster zero, shall we say, a fucking space dragon. Oh, and because this book came out in 1968, 4 years after the release of Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, for various reasons of both unoriginality and because my mind just made the connection, the space dragon, fully described in the book as the space bat angel dragon, was in my childhood mind in this depiction of the book, just a recolored King Ghidorah. And I literally mean that in the version of the book I read, the space dragon was literally just King Ghidorah colored green. But yeah, so anyway, the climax of the book, a fucking cosmic destroyer space dragon, literally 1/4 the size of the planet Earth, descends onto the planet and instantly destroys the continent of Australia just by sitting on it. The Iron Giant gets drafted to be the world's superhero, and he travels to Australia where he defeats the Space Bat Angel Dragon by getting it to injure itself in a series of weird pissing contests where he somehow indirectly purifies its evil and returns it to its original pure holy state as a star spirit. After that, it teaches humanity the music of the spheres, a galactic harmony that causes humanity to embrace world peace, never fight again. And okay, yeah, that does align with the film's anti-war message, but it doesn't in such a cooler, cosmic way that involves fucking giant monster battles, mysterious cosmic power, outer space. Like, my point is that the book goes full off the rails into some very trippy places. And essentially, the only way they could have fully adapted the book would probably have been if they had done like a full fucking trilogy where there were like 2 more movie sequels, where in the first sequel the Iron Giant fights the Space Dragon, and the third and final movie the Dragon and the Iron Giant team up and bring about global peace with like their rock music. Of course, the Hobbit movies have later shown us the disastrous results of stretching a simple children's book into a 9-hour film trilogy, so maybe in the long run it's better that they didn't do this. But nonetheless, as a kid watching the Iron Giant movie in 1999, I just sat there in the theater stewing. Because the main thing I loved about the book was it ended in a fucking climactic kaiju battle. Like, the fucking book, The Iron Giant, ends with a fucking Pacific Rim final dramatic battle. Like, I was pissed that the movie not only cut out this glorious climactic fucking kaiju battle. This battle, mind you, was literally the only reason I read the book, because it was the only book in the public library that climaxed with a kaiju battle. But no, the fucking sentimentalists at 1990s Warner Brothers had to fucking cut it all out in favor of fucking McCarthyism paranoia and cookie-cutter nuclear war is bad message that fucking every movie has like nowadays. So that's why I disliked the Iron Giant movie, because they changed the ending from the book and they just didn't take it far enough. Oh, and by the way, one last interesting tangent that no one ever brings up is that the film was actually originally developed as a freaking rock opera created by Peter Townsend of The Who, who had previously done some insane, major, classic, trippy 70s acid rock operas like Tommy and Quadrophenia. Have you guys ever seen Tommy? Like, there's like a whole like sequence where like freaking Tina Turner like tries to kill a dude in an Iron Maiden. And Quadrophenia just has like fucking Vespas. Anyway, the point is the rock opera version got like as far as like a full soundtrack existing, and then like a few live stage performances in London to see if like anyone liked it. But the point is the rock opera was actually the catalyst for the movie getting made in the first place. Unfortunately, at the start of the production, Brad Bird like took one look at the rock opera and just kind of threw the entire treatment in the trash. He paid off Townsend for doing the work and pitching the movie, but then completely started over. Real quick reviewing the rock opera as an album now, because it was released as a record. It definitely follows the story of the book much better than the movie did, and it does end with a kaiju battle with the Space Bat Angel, so I'm very pleased about that. And I'll even praise that the musical compositions are very good, about as good as you'd expect The Who to be at their peak. Unfortunately, where the rock opera falls short is the lyrics. The lyrics are really bare bones and really uninspiring. Most of them are just kind of like a phrase in the book repeated like until you're sick of it. So it basically just comes off as a badly sung summary of the book that loops over the same story beats like enough times that it exhausts you about them. So I can see why this version really never went anywhere, because it's simultaneously too psychedelic for kids but just too wholesome for adults. The rock opera just wasn't developed really enough to turn it into a movie. So I can see why Brad Bird threw it in the trash and just had to start over with it either way. Now, despite my 1990s flavored disappointment with the film, I do begrudgingly, retroactively respect this movie now in the current day because, 20 years out, the movie is a triumph of 2D animation. It's probably the last time Warner Animation ever really tried to make anything truly original at this level of like highbrowness, and I doubt we'll ever see them try anything like that ever again, especially with Warner Brothers' current corrupt and destructive regime in charge. But that brings me back to this question again. Who is the Iron Giant's true archenemy? It's not Kent Mansley, he's a fucking joke. And it's not the Space Bat Angel, because the Space Bat Angel was cut out of the movie. Although my first version of this video ended here with me just awarding the prize to the Space Bat Angel. Just when I thought I was finished with this deep dive, my deep dive into the Iron Giant took a turn for the absolute worst to the darkest places of the human soul I was not prepared to go to. Get ready to get depressed, guys, because at this point my Iron Giant review fully goes off the rails. And it dropped me suddenly in a place I was not prepared at all to go. And that is the death of American poet Sylvia Plath. Sylvia Plath is a very dangerous historical figure in my view. She's essentially the human equivalent of a still burning coal mine fire from the 1930s. Somehow still hurting people centuries after her suicide. Bringing her up even topically might even hurt me and make this video get restricted. Sylvia Plath was, in a lot of ways, your pretty standard 1950s housewife. Hell, she was better than that. She was an above average, rich lady. She was a successful writer. She had published a few books to her name. She was an author. Sylvia Plath, though, had something wrong with her. She was born wired wrong. She was genetically disposed to kill herself. Even though she was one of the richest women living in the world at the time, none of that mattered to her. She could have been homeless living in a gutter. She could have been a wild woman living naked in a deep jungle. But at the end of the day, there was something fundamentally wrong with her brain that made her physically incapable of ever feeling happiness. And that feeling led to her deciding to destroy herself. Sylvia Plath lived in a fog of chronic destruction, chronic depression, and the 1950s just couldn't handle it, and it couldn't help her. Her doctors tried everything to change her behavior. They gave her drugs, they gave her shock treatments, they gave her hypnosis. They tried literally everything that was available at the time, and none of it worked. To the point where in the last 10 years of her life, she tried to kill herself on such a regular basis that her friends and family became numb to it. She OD'd on pills, but doctors were able to resuscitate her. She drove her car into a frozen river, but Good Samaritans pulled her out of the water, and I guess she just bought another car because fuck it, she was rich. She was so obsessed with killing herself that her family had to baby-proof her house. Unfortunately, she put just so much effort in trying to kill herself that one day she eventually succeeded, and she killed herself in the most grisly, heavy metal, gruesome way possible. She stuck her head inside a 400-degree baking oven and turned it on. She died an incredibly horrible death. I say that Sylvia Plath is a dangerous figure because since her death, she's gone from being a simple, depressed housewife to a full-blown spirit of vengeance. In so much of her writing that she left behind, while her writing bears some artistic value, she's literally become more dangerous dead than she ever was alive. In the decades since her death, Plath has gone on to inspire literally hundreds of copycat suicides. She's been dead for nearly 70 years, and in my view, she's one of the most dangerous historical figures lurking in the depths of the human psyche. Say what you will about Charles Manson. Charles Manson hasn't indirectly gotten anyone killed since 1969. But there are suicides happening now, even in this present year, that can be attributed to someone being mentally imbalanced and overreacting to the ghastly, radiating sadness and the urge of self-destruction that oozes from Plath's writing, somehow still transmitted from beyond the grave. Plath's legacy of sadness unfortunately did not stop with her death and continues on even now. Which brings us back to the Iron Giant. The reason I just went off on a rant about Sylvia Plath all of a sudden was because Ted Hughes, the author behind the Iron Giant, was married to Sylvia Plath. And it just gets worse from there, unfortunately. Because not only did Plath bake her head in an oven while her kids were locked upstairs into their bedrooms, Ted Hughes, after the fact, was unfortunately and wrongfully blamed for both failing to treat his wife's unstoppable depression, failing to do anything to make her happy, failing to watch her 24/7, and ultimately failing to stop her from killing herself. Because he was at work when she killed herself, after all. And making matters worse, Plath left him with 2 children. But it didn't just end there, because those 2 children genetically inherited Plath's self-destructive nature. Her son Nicholas struggled with mental illness his entire life, plus the additional trauma of, his mom baking herself in an oven when he was a kid and locking him in a room while she did it. They didn't tell Nicholas what she did for nearly 10 years, but I guess he eventually found out since it was a matter of the public record. I honestly believe that Ted Hughes was a good man. He just picked the wrong girl to spend his life with. And it put him in a really bad spot for a very long time, even though he did eventually remarry. But unfortunately, his son Nicholas was just never able to deal with his mother's death. On top of the additional tragic curse of inheriting her genetic self-destructive nature. So, in a last-ditch effort to try and cheer up his son, Ted Hughes created the Iron Giant. Stories of a self-insert child character named Hilger Hughes, who defeated cosmic forces of sadness and dragons from space. Ted Hughes eventually died in 1998, while the movie was in its final stages of pre-production. He did read the finished script and gave it his full approval. While Nick Hughes, the inspiration for Hogarth Hughes, unfortunately didn't have as good as a life. In his later years, he became a salmon researcher and moved to Alaska because that's where the salmon live. But even living amongst his beloved salmon, he was tormented by his mother's self-destructive nature, and it cursed him with crippling depression every day of his adult life. Eventually, the specter of his mother eventually caught up to him too, and in 2009, at the age of 47, Nicholas Hughes, the inspiration for Hogarth Hughes, hung himself with a rope. Another victim to the never-ending curse of Sylvia Plath. So maybe that was the Iron Giant's true enemy, an incredible sadness that just could never be overcome in real life. So once again, we have to consider, was the Iron Giant a weapon with a soul? Was he a giant robot ready to throw down against a space dragon? No. The Iron Giant was a fictional character, a hero created by a loving father to protect a lonely, sad boy from the harsh reality of his broken home. He was a symbol of hope, a literal Superman. Anyway, that's what the Iron Giant's supposed to be, but for now, he's gonna keep shilling out stupid cameos in Space Jam and whatever. I was me, Buster Green, and this is my favorite book, or at least it was when I was a kid. Please subscribe. Thanks. Later.